Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman live on your radio. Hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use, no doubt, starts now. This is the broadcast for May 7th in the year of our Lord 2025. This is hour one of two, and the goal always to protect life, liberty, and property, to promote God, family, and country, using the checks and balances brilliantly found in the supreme law of our land, the Constitution for the United States of America, which is our guide. As you know, we reject revolution, unless it's a Jesus revolution. Then we're in because we follow the Prince of Peace. Without further ado, James Edwards, fellow talk show host, author, commentator, and more, thepoliticalcesspool.org. Welcome back, sir.
Sam, it is great to be back. I am refreshed, rejuvenated, recharged. My wife and I celebrated our 19th wedding anniversary in the little spa town of Hot Springs, Arkansas. Now, if that sounds lavish, folks, don't let it deceive you. We did go to the bathhouse. The bathhouse experience, the full immersive bathhouse experience. I don't know what it costs a place like Aspen or something like that, Miami, $45, and you get the works in Hot Springs. So it's a beautiful little town, and my dad used to take me there growing up all the time, my brother and my mom, and we would all go up there. And so that
and
19
no offense
years of
to your
marriage.
dad, it's always better to go with your wife than your dad. You know what I'm saying?
Well, actually, we didn't go to the bathhouses as a family, but we did go to that town, and we would stay on Lake Hamilton and do some boating and outdoor activities. Just a beautiful little place. 19 years of marriage, 21 years on the radio this year, and more years of friendship with you, Sam, than I can count, which always gets replenished here on the every time I'm on with you. So it's great to be here.
My wedding anniversary is tomorrow, believe it or not.
We took a trip together, 40-year anniversaries, if folks can believe it, to Branson.
33 years for us, James.
There you go. Longer on the radio. I don't know how I'm going to catch you. Every time I celebrate one, you say
the fact is,
married longer on the radio longer.
I'm just older and closer to, I hope not, loss of memory and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
I worry about it. I tell you, it does go by.
All right. I want to start with, our buddy over at Radio 75, Scoop Stanton. He used to always come on your show, and he always used to bring the, what's that pizza place called?
What pizza place did he like?
Oh, come on. It'd always go to that pizza place where there's all these violence and meltdowns and everything else.
Chuck E. Cheese. Yeah, Chuck E. Cheese. Right. He loves Chuck E. Cheese.
Well, anyway, he'd always talk about Chuck E. Cheese because there'd be like women in there with their little kids, and the women would be getting all, drunk and everything, and then they'd just have a violent rager, and it's just like a meltdown in Chuck E. Cheese every other week. And it was kind of interesting and kind of funny and kind of a disgrace all at the same time. Well, we're kind of starting to get, I'm just going to call it Democrat Chuck E. Cheese, okay? It's not at Chuck E. Cheese. The Democrats are everywhere. Okay, so it's just kind of the whole same mentality has left Chuck E. Cheese. It kind of infected the Democratic Party. And we mentioned the violent rhetoric of many of them over and over and over. But they're literally losing their minds, and the rhetoric has ratcheted up. So now we're talking about Texas Rep. Jasmine Crockett. She tells college graduates, literally, they know how to use a chair, is what she says. And she's referring to, I guess, a situation before or whatever. But what she's kind of saying is, hey, just beat people with the chair, James, is what she's kind of saying. Have you seen this?
I have to, as I said, if this has come out in the last 4 days, I've been a little off the grid. But this is, this is more progress. This is more moving in the direction they've been heading for a long time with the Democratic Party. It's the Democratic Party.
Here's my question: why don't they arrest her and tie her to the chair?
And WCW, this is
I'm just saying this is insanity, though. You can't call for this kind of stuff, James.
But you got Linda McMahon in as the, Secretary of the Department of Education. Yeah. So I mean, this is, this sort of reminds me of the old WWF days and beating people with chairs and things like that. So. Well, I mean,
I just don't understand it, though. It's the latest act or recommendation of violence. They're also recommending that they just literally go after Trump and everybody else. They're losing their minds, and they're starting to ratchet up the violence, James.
We talked about this the last time I was on, which was actually sort of like an extra session last week. They are, man, listen, I mean, we should be thankful, I guess, that this Democratic Congresswoman has ratcheted down the rhetoric to just beating people with chairs or tying them to chairs and doing things like that, because we were talking last week about how the majority of Democrats, according to a poll, believe that political assassinations are okay with Trump and Musk as the intended targets. You know, if it wasn't the majority, it was 30-40%. So
anyway, there
it's
you
definitely
have it.
going
That's
in that
how they
direction
do it.
over there.
And we're getting more violence in America, but we have nothing when it comes to violence compared to Africa, James. Headline,
Well,
Trump to welcome first batch of white South Africans fleeing government-sponsored racial persecution. They're going to be here within days, according to the Gateway Pundit. And I guess on February the 7th, 2025, President Trump signed an executive order halting all U.S. aid to South Africa, claiming government-sponsored race-based discrimination, including predatory property confiscation, James. And they say that it can be recalled that the South African, I guess they call it an EFF leader or whatever, Julius Malena, was again calling for genocide against white South Africans at a rally last year. So this is very, very interesting. Julius Malena told supporters, we must be able to explain to our people what black consciousness is and why it cannot coexist with white people. One of the two must die, he went on to say. Trump's executive order mandates that the U.S., quote, promote resettlement of Afrikaners as refugees escaping such discrimination. It directs the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Homeland Security to prioritize humanitarian relief, including admission and resettlement through our admissions program. Anyway, the U.S. Embassy's following the order, and they say they've got over 67,000 individuals that have already filed to say, please get me out. Now, James, this is something, I bring this up because this is something that for decades has been, when we bring it up, they say we're lying, we're crazy, isn't true, you guys are racists. And now the truth comes out through the Trump administration. James?
God bless President Trump for this initiative. As you said, Sam, we have been covering this on this network for 20 years on my program alone and on yours as well. And as you said, it was always dismissed as some sort of a racist conspiracy theory, except for the fact that, of course, here on this network, we actually interview white farmers and whites from South Africa who offer this eyewitness testimony. Just last month, I had back on Simon Roche from the civil defense organization Sightliners, who offers this eyewitness testimony during our March Around the World programming. I guess that was 2 months ago now in March. But no, this is something that has happened. I mean, the videos are all over the place. Kill the Afrikaner, kill the Boer, kill the farmer, kill the Boer. They chant this, you know, with the president leading the chant in these huge stadiums over there. And the amount of rape and murder, black on white rape and murder, that is exactly what it is. I wish it wasn't that. If it wasn't that, we wouldn't report it. But it is what it is, and so we do report it. And only now, after all these years of it getting more worse, more violent, did an American administration, an American president do anything about it. And this was an executive order. I mean, Trump, I was saying last week, my friend and yours, Lou Moore, Ron Paul's former campaign manager when he ran for president, and spent years in Washington as a congressional chief of staff, and of course has the Hour of Decision radio program on this network, which is wonderful, wonderful inside stuff. But he's going to be on with me on TPC this Saturday to do the 100-day grade of the Trump administration so far, and we're going to talk about this, and we're going to talk about how just right out of the gate, Trump went with freeing the J6 prisoners and then of course, this executive order on South Africa, and then all the way through recent actions taking aim at disparate impact, which is a truly racist, if there is such a thing, a race-based preference. What is racism if not picking people for the color of their skin and not because of their merit? So we're going to cover it all. But this thing with South Africa was really one of the biggest and most pleasantly surprising actions that have come out of Washington since January, and it's just these poor people. I would advise them not to, if they do resettle over here, and again, thank God for the Trump administration for giving them the opportunity to flee that carnage over there if they so choose. A lot of them want to stay. That's their home. They want to stay. But for the ones that come over, I would advise them not to come to a place like Memphis so they'll feel right at home in the worst possible way. 19 murders in 1 week in Memphis a few days ago.
All right, hold on. Skip the break. 19 murders. Now, I've been telling James to flee for years, but he won't listen.
I feel kind of like them. I can relate to this.
I pray that the next one isn't James or anybody like that, ladies and gentlemen. This is serious. But here's the interesting next story. So on one hand, Trump is shutting down illegals. On the other hand, he's bringing these people to America and saying, hey, they do deserve asylum. Over 67,000 people want refugee status over this program. Now, 67,000 compared to the millions that have been coming into the country under Joe Biden is nothing. But here's interesting. Tom Homan announced that the Trump administration will triple the workforce in sanctuary cities. We're going to flood the zone with officers, says Tom. And then Trump offers $1,000 stipend for illegal aliens to self-deport, saving thousands in deportation costs. Now, I find this interesting because on one hand, what are we saying? Hey, let's bring the whites in for refugee status, but nobody else, right?
Well, I mean, you're talking about the South African order again?
Yeah, so if we bring them in, but yet we're blocking everybody else and kicking everybody else out, how do we bring them in, right?
Well, you can invite. I mean, I think the nation has the ability to pick and choose what kind of immigrants it wants and for different reasons. And, of course, there's a special circumstance in South Africa that's existing where these people are being targeted as a result of their race, and you want to give those people a little relief while not opening up the floodgates necessarily to just the dregs of society worldwide. I mean, yes, a country can, in fact, pick and choose who they want and who they don't want.
Yes, they can. And that's the reason that I bring these stories up back to back. It's not to set a trap like the liberals would do and be like, hey, this is a white supremacy thing. No, let me stop you and explain the difference here so everybody understands, okay? Around the world, there's all kinds of skirmishes. There's all kinds of battles. Most of it, though, isn't the government. Most of it is mayhem of gangs or this or that or whatever. And we're not really looking for a limited group that has been abused. What they're saying is everybody wants to come to America and everybody wants to claim asylum in these situations. So it's a lawless world, not perpetuated by the government, but by society. Governments might be weak, but they're not leading it necessarily. And then you got a big run for the border to the United States, and everybody wants asylum for every reason under the sun. Not sustainable, not reasonable. However, in this case, it's literally government-sanctioned murder, government-sanctioned theft of property, government-sanctioned, and we're not talking about millions of people that will overrun the country. We're talking about thousands of people that truly need relief. And so here's what I'm trying to get across. There's big differences that the media is not telling you about in these situations. At first glance, you might be deceived into thinking that it's identical. And, hey, it's just whites we're allowing in and everybody else we're not. No. You got to look at the reality on the ground, the differences here. State sponsors theft of property because you're white is way different than someone saying, hey, man, there's a gang on my block. James?
That's exactly right. No, I mean, there's nothing more to say to that. I mean, but this common sense and this ability to speak clearly and in a way that is entirely defendable escapes the left, who want to obfuscate and turn everything, as you say, into a trap or a trick or a gotcha type of moment where people backpedal. But I think increasingly, in the last 5 years, last year or two, even more so than that, people are really just unshackling themselves from these games that are being played and just holding their ground. I mean, you saw it on that playground in Rochester, Minnesota, with this young lady. This is there's a new spirit in town that I think a lot of it flows from the sort of manliness and the take no you-know-what from your enemy and unapologetic tone that we see in the Trump administration, frankly.
I get it. The stage was set by us, and Trump has jumped on our shoulders. Is
well,
really happened,
hey,
James.
You are absolutely right about that. That is not to give us or we or I or me or you too much credit, but the collective that we have been working as a part of, and just as I said before, and I really like this analogy. The first guys over the wall are going to take the heaviest damage, and they're going to be the casualties while everybody else gets into place. But you see it now. But if it wasn't for those people who just went out there and just got pummeled by the media, by these hate groups, the SPLC and the ADL, and deplatformed from everywhere, somebody had to do it before others would do it. Now more and more people are doing it, and you see freedom of speech coming back in this country.
And let's be very clear about this. And you say, well, Sam, you guys are just all over the map when it comes to the white people. You're fine to let them in. Everybody else, you're not. No, stop. Don't lie. Don't manipulate the truth, okay? The reason that these 67,000 people deserve something versus the millions is because these 67,000 people aren't hardcore criminals being released from prisons and mental institutions, etc., of other nations. Okay, this isn't the same. We're deporting from Africa in this case, or importing, whatever you want to call it, these people who have been abused. They're not criminals, James. In fact, they're the better portion of a society, not because they're white, although that's what the Africans are saying. It's because they're white that they're got to be abused and land's got to be stolen. But it's because they aren't criminals and they're being abused. See, that's the difference. The rest of the world is exporting their criminals to the United States, whereas we're inviting them because they're not criminals. In fact, the criminal element of the government is abusing these people. And so there's a huge difference. If you really study the historical reality and the circumstances that we're discussing, they are completely on opposite ends of the discussion, and that's the reason. And that's also the reason Trump is bringing wealthy people to the United States, because they provide jobs. Okay? These are educated people. These are people who aren't criminals in their societies. Huge difference that I think might be lost if somebody doesn't break it down like me, James.
Well, it is, and I like the idea. I actually do like the idea of getting this, the Trump gold card, for however many millions of dollars. I mean, you are bringing in people who can, provide resources. This doggerel that is on the Statue of Liberty. I mean, this is just some poem by some communist. People think that that's the official immigration policy of the United States, that, we can only welcome wretched refuse, which is frankly what has been the immigration policy, the lowest of the low, the dregs of society. And in many cases, not just poor and not just people who can't really contribute in a meaningful way, but criminals, outright criminals. And hey, listen, let's get real. Let's get real here, folks. I mean, if you can handle being real, go look at the immigration policy as set in this country by the founding fathers, the original Immigration and Naturalization Act. I mean, yes, in their world, in the world that they created here on this continent, in the original United States, you had to be a free white male property owner of good moral character. Think of how many white men would be disqualified by that line.
Yeah,
today.
Donald and Elon would be disqualified, James.
But, I mean, yes, there is nothing wrong. There is nothing wrong at all with creating a nation for you and your posterity and your progeny. And why wouldn't you want to have a high-trust, functional society where people have things in common? I think every nation or all people groups are entitled to a nation that reflect their values and their people. And I don't begrudge that from the other people. But if people want to say, well, you're doing this because of their white, well, that's what the founding fathers did. That's for sure. But this thing with South Africa, of course, is it's not like, hey, we're going to go and just, suck every South African whites out of South Africa. It's opening a door to people who have been truly terrorized and victimized, and in many cases killed, raped, had their land confiscated and things like that because of their race. And so,
and let me make this
if
very
we are
clear,
concerned about racism.
Sorry, go ahead.
You got to. No, I was just going to say, if you are concerned about so-called racism and discrimination as a result of someone's race, why not welcome these people in?
Well, and my response is this. If you say to me, Sam, if it's about criminals, then we need to vet these people to make sure that, hey, bad guys don't somehow get in the mix. Fine. I get it. I don't have any problem with that. Find out who's truly suffering and everything else. And then you say, well, how do we organize? How do we prioritize who we let come to America and when? And I think that's a great discussion we need to have. When can someone bring prosperity and stability and safety and resources to the United States? When is a group truly being harmed that we can actually assimilate in meaningful ways? See, that's kind of the other problem is that, hey, the South Africans are not trying to create an overrun of the United States, or like La Raza, the Mexican groups, gangs. Hey, they're coming north and saying they want their land back. The list goes on and on and on to the differences in what we're discussing here. People need to understand those nuances and differences. They really do, James.
These people are, yes, as you say. Yeah, I can't speak monolithically.
We're not being invaded by the South Afrikaners, are we?
No. Well, they have a very hard time.
That's a big difference. We are being invaded by all these other criminal organizations and criminal gangs and everything else, right? It's literally an invasion, James.
Well, that's been the whole purpose of it. And that's the great replacement is real, and that has been the actual policy is to welcome that invasion. But the thing about these people, now, again, you can't speak monolithically because even amongst the entirety of whites in South Africa, I'm sure that there is some criminal elements and there are not good people. However, it is going to be very, very, very low in relation to some of the other folks who have been allowed in recent decades. And these people, by and large, and almost to a man or a woman, are industrious. They are hardworking. They are men of the soil. I mean, I don't want to compare them to like ants. I can't think of a better analogy, though. You get the ants and you put them in this little travel thing, and they just do what they do wherever they're put. And I know a few South Africans who have been able to come here, not as a result of this recent executive order, but prior to that. And what they do when they come here is they buy land and they start farming. I mean, they are people who farm.
They buy land, they start farming, they speak English, they're highly educated. I mean, I can keep going, James.
There you go. They are a credit to society. And, of course, there are some people that are credit to society, regardless of what nation they may come from. But this is a nation that you would want to bring over. These people deserve it. They have been long-suffering. And, again, one of the greatest and most pleasantly surprising things that Trump has tried to address and tackle since he's been there. And it seems like it's been 4 years. It's only been 4 months. I mean, we certainly have had seemingly 4 years or maybe even 4 decades of action in the last 4 months. It's been a dizzying thing. But this is one of the most eye-opening to me for sure.
Yeah, Julius Malena told supporters, quote, "We must be able to explain to our people what black consciousness is and why it cannot coexist with the idea that white people are inherently superior, and one of the two must die." Think about that kind of a deal. Now, I've never said that I was better than anybody else because my skin's white. And by the way, when I go out and get a tan, I don't run around and say that I'm less superior because I have a tan now. See, it isn't about color. It's about education. It's about cultural expectations. It's about law-abiding behavior. It's about, I can keep going, but that's what it's about. And we need to understand the differences. So don't fall into the media lie and be duped on this, my friends. Don't do it. They're following the executive order, and you're going to have some, South Afrikaners coming to the United States. Tom Homan's also going to give $1,000 to anybody who will leave. Good start. They say it'll be a lot cheaper, right? So anyway, there you have that. When we come back, I want to talk about an attorney. His name is Ty Clevenger. He's a friend of ours, and we'll tell you what he's doing. It's pretty cool. You remember the name Seth Rich? Ponder on it. We'll talk about it. This is the one and only Liberty Roundtable Live. James Edwards on your radio.
How would you like to help this program reach more people and earn silver at the same time? Call or text 801-669-2211 for complete details.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Greg Clugston in Washington. Tensions are running high between India and Pakistan after India fired missiles into Pakistani-controlled territory. The strikes killed more than 24 people. Here's the BBC's Azeda Moshiri.
The government says 5 locations were targeted, some of them in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. These were areas that the government had encouraged journalists to visit and said were areas that India claimed were militant training camps. Since the deadly attack in Indian-administered Kashmir, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had vowed he would hold the perpetrators to account. Pakistan has consistently denied any involvement and called for an independent investigation.
Meanwhile, Israeli strikes across Gaza killed at least 59 people as Israel prepares to ramp up its offensive. Israel blames Hamas for the death toll because it operates from civilian infrastructure, including schools. President Trump isn't backing away from his tough talk on tariffs. He's making it clear that other countries need to deal with the U.S.
We will sign some deals, but much bigger than that is we're going to put down the price that people are going to have to pay to shop in the United States. Think of us as a super luxury store, a store that has the goods.
The first trade talks between the U.S. and China are set to begin this weekend. Today's the day that Real ID goes into effect. Travelers taking a domestic flight and using a state-issued ID to get through security must have one that meets federal Real ID requirements. Homeland Security officials say people without Real ID will be able to fly after clearing additional identity checks. Catholic cardinals are sequestered at the Vatican for their conclave to elect the next pope. 133 cardinals will be voting. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Financing a home, especially in today's market, is one of the biggest decisions you'll make for your family. Work with a mortgage company that puts you first. I do. Work with a lender founded on biblical principles like do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. I do. It's Mike Gallagher for the only mortgage company I've used for almost a decade now when financing or refinancing Fellowship Home Loans. I'm friends with the owners, Mike and Brian. I even have them on my show occasionally. I know the care their team puts into every single customer. I can personally tell you that it's a smooth, stress-free process, and that's due to Fellowship's level of service and expertise that puts you in the right loan for your family and your goals. There's a reason Fellowship Home Loans is flooded with 5-star reviews. Whether purchasing a home or a cash-out refi to consolidate some higher interest debt, you can trust Fellowship Home Loans. Start the process. Make the call. 800-510-MIKE, 800-510-MIKE, 800-510-6453. Fellowship Home Loans, mortgage lending by the book.
Nationwide Mortgage Bankers, Equal Housing Lender, NMLS number 819382.
Do you know what is great about America? Ask an Immigrant. Ask an Immigrant is a new podcast dedicated to helping Americans, especially our youth, value, appreciate, and be grateful for the freedoms we have here in America. Join host Lydia Wallace-Nuttall as she interviews immigrants from around the world to discover their inspiring personal stories about why they came to America. To learn more about why America is the most prosperous, greatest country in the world, download the Loving Liberty app or go to lovingliberty.net.
In the medical field, IT security is crucial. Our highly skilled consultants are HIPAA certified and have 20-plus years of experience servicing medical clinics, billing, and supply companies. We offer comprehensive endpoint protection, guarding your computers and servers against all stages of threats. And with our 24/7 monitoring services, you'll never worry about extensive downtime again. Ready to level up your IT support? Call 801-706-6980 today and discover how great IT services can be with managed IT services.
Being there with your child and being there for your child are two completely different things. One denotes a simple presence, which is a start, but can also be accomplished by someone other than you.
Hey, can you help me with this algebra problem?
See, that sheep did a fine job of being there with the child, but it didn't do a very good job of being there for the child. Now listen to the difference an involved parent can make.
Hey, can you help me with this algebra problem?
I'm not very good at algebra, but do you have any English questions? 'Cause I done real good in English.
Oh, Mom.
Okay, let's take a look.
Okay, so the algebra problem didn't get solved, but something better happened. Mom was there for her child. And when you're really there, they'll know how much you care. from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. For more tips on strengthening your family, visit family.mormon.org.
Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right, James Edwards, thepoliticalcesspool.org, with me on your radio for 2 hours today. Hard-hitting talk at your fingertips. Let me explain one more detail about the Afrikaners and the way they do things versus the way the rest of the world seems to want to just deal with America. The rest of the world wants to have other governments promote the trafficking of people all the way to the United States border, and then governments participating in violating our laws, creating a flat-out invasion. They tried to lie and deny it, but the truth between Biden and Trump, you can see the point being made. Well, listen carefully, and let me ask you, James, if this would be true in other places. So in South Africa, the white South Afrikaners, the headline says this: following Trump's executive order, the U.S. Embassy in South Africa reported receiving a list of over 67,000 individuals expressing interest in obtaining refugee status under this order. Now, just imagine if it was like, hey, man, in Honduras, they had the Honduran American embassy there, and people added their names to a list and said, I'd be interested in peacefully transferring through this for safety. In other words, this whole example provides a solution. Why don't all the other countries get in line and try the same appropriate tactics of law and order? Hey, we've got a list. Do you want to be, are you interested in this? Yes, I am. Okay, here's how it's going to happen. Okay. This provides a solution-oriented example to the point being made. It's not the same like the mainstream press would want you to believe. It's completely different, and that's the proof in the pudding, James.
I am so glad you pivoted back to this for just a brief encore, Sam, because I'm always hesitant to try to go back myself when you're ready to move on to the next topic. But this is just a total coincidence. When we were in the break at the bottom of the hour, I was looking at the things that are scheduled to post at thepoliticalcesspool.org. And as your listeners may know, I have a weekly feature. I guess you could call it a column, but it's basically a print Q&A in every edition of the American Free Press, which is a print newspaper based out of Washington, D.C.
And dear friends of ours, I might ask. They've been friends for decades, people.
They are great, and they have been around. I was going to say it's very similar in style and substance to the Epoch Times. It's in a conservative, populist newspaper, but it's just been around
like
a lot
Gateway
longer.
Pundit. I mean, we can go on, right?
But yeah, they were again one of the first in terms of print and radio media. First over the wall, probably right here in print media. They were there before some of these others, so it's just really good and it's an honor. Right. And so they give me this opportunity to sort of like extend the audience of the program by some of the guests, by featuring in the paper some of the guests we regularly interview on the air, and then just presenting it as a print Q&A for their readership. Well, anyway. Posting tomorrow, and just again, total coincidence, but posting tomorrow is a Q&A that I did on South Africa. So if you go to thepoliticalcesspool.org, tomorrow morning is when it'll be up on the website. But it's a 10-question Q&A with the aforementioned Simon Roche, who is a media spokesman. He's an international media spokesman. He has appeared on media all over the world for this organization that is devoted to protecting non-combatant Afrikaner Boer civilians in the event of a large-scale conflict. And so, but I talked to him about everything we're talking about right now. So again, folks, don't take my word for it, Sam Bushman's word for it. We haven't been to South Africa, but we talked to people on the ground there. He lives there. He's a fourth-generation South Afrikaner. We talked to him in this interview about what is daily life there like for the white minority. Again, eyewitness testimony, his reaction, or the reaction rather of the people in South Africa to the re-election of Donald Trump. We talk about this executive order. We talk about how Elon Musk used the term white genocide to describe the government-sanctioned persecutions of whites in South Africa. That was Elon Musk's exact phrase that he used. We talk about the decline of manufacturing infrastructure in South Africa since the fall of apartheid, and many, many other things. So if you're interested in South Africa at all, it's going to be a great thing you can just read and digest at your own time there at the website tomorrow. But yeah, everything else, Sam, you're spot on about.
Anyway, I think it's really important to understand those differences, folks. And if you don't believe me on that, then I want you to show me the peaceful list of people who want to come to the United States filing it with their embassies. And if you say there's no embassy in some of these other countries, then you got to ask the next question: why, James?
You know, I think that is the one thing that I have not yet seen, and I would like to know. Well, I would like to know why on two parts. Why, number one, yes, why aren't other embassies working to get if there are
because they're not law-abiding, James. They're anti-hostile governments that hate our guts. They're communist in nature. It isn't the same at all, right?
Exactly, and so there is that. Yeah,
and that's why I want to document this. I want people to really understand this, James. It's critical.
So why wouldn't some of these South American nations who admit, hey, now with the case of the white South Africans, they have really no political power. They are absolutely an oppressed minority in every sense of the word. Now, in some of these South African nations, you would say, well, it's the the government that is actually doing the oppressing is the one that may be appealing to have some of their victims taken in, but whatever. I mean, but the point is, I think, why couldn't some of these embassies, why couldn't some of these governments say, hey, listen, we've got a problem here that we cannot fix. We've got these people that are suffering. Is there anything you can do? We would really appreciate it. But they don't do that. I mean, they just let them come, and they act like it's our burden and responsibility to take in.
And they foster and fund it too. That's my whole point.
Yeah.
Like, look at Mexico, for instance. They've created a literal conduit pipeline with protection from the military in Mexico to bring people straight through their country and violate our laws right on our borders. Criminal government haters. Literally, we'll create a protected pipeline. We'll give them food. We'll give them water. We'll just, move them on their way right into violating the United States and creating mayhem in America and stuff like that. Look, this is insane. Whereas these other guys are like, yeah, if you ask me if I'd like to leave this place where I'm being persecuted, I'd love to add my name to a list to see if I can't peacefully be moved and protected. Huge differences, folks. And I'm telling you, the mainstream press will not tell you this story.
It is a huge difference, and it is important that you brought that out. And so I would like to know the why on that. And the one other why that I don't think you may know, and I don't know, so this isn't a trick question. Like, let's see if Sam knows. I don't know, but I would like to know.
Well, Sam knows everything, James.
Let me tell you something,
I may not
folks.
know. It's just because we're talk show hosts, folks, that doesn't mean we know everything. We do study hard, and we are professionals. But look, there's some times where we're not caught up on a story, or we're not caught up on this or that, or we don't know the best solution sometimes. And that's why it takes a lot of work to provide solutions. That's why most hosts bring you to the brink of the problem, but they never provide or deliver solutions. We do. And that's why I'm spending so much time on this. This is the solution of law and order, James.
It is, and but the question I was going to ask is, or what I'm curious to know is, who put this issue in Trump's ear? Was it Trump himself who has noticed this with regards to the persecution and the rape and the murder of the whites
tell you who,
in South
James?
Africa? Or what? Yeah.
That would be James Edwards and Sam Bushman.
I wonder if it has been from our collective.
Say, no, you guys overstate yourselves. And then my response is, why on the congressional record do they say Sam Bushman and James Edwards are the nexus then? Just wondering.
It is entirely possible that, well, as going back again to the Founding Fathers, I think this was a different context, but, the patriots who start the brush fires in people's minds, but I never have heard of which administration official was the one who said, you know what, I was the one who sort of brought this to Trump and put it on his desk for consideration, or if Trump himself said. I mean, we saw the executive order, but we don't know the
I'm going to give you another
thought
opinion who
process
might be
that
involved.
leads to it. I think it is entirely possible. Yes, go.
Your buddy Elon Musk.
Well, from South Africa, yeah. Well, I mean, certainly he had been talking about it for a while, and he even used the term white genocide. Well, I mean, that would be the simplest and most plausible, I guess.
Sam, James, and Elon.
Elon was right there.
Anyway, I'm just saying. So it's a very interesting discussion, people, and I don't mean to be crazy. I don't mean to, but I do want you to really understand this story, because the differences, the nuances may not be apparent to people. The differences of how this is going down, the reasoning, the circumstances, the history, all that stuff's got to be brought to bear for this discussion. All right, hang tight. It's Sam and James. We got a lot to cover, man. We're just getting started, baby. I want to talk about Ty Clevenger. He's an attorney. We'll do it in seconds. Our buddy Seth Rich. By the way, Seth Rich was a Democrat, right? Why is it that the constitutional conservatives keep going back to the Seth Rich story? I mean, he's supposed to not even be our friend, right? Let's talk about it.
Step into the boots of the American West with Range Magazine, where grit meets grace. This is a front row seat to the stories, struggles, and triumphs of ranchers, farmers, and stewards of the land. From jaw-dropping photography to no-nonsense reporting, Range brings you the untold tales of life on the range. Whether you're a city dweller with a cowboy's heart or living life where the pavement ends, Range speaks to the soul of the West. Subscribe today at rangemagazine.com.
Are you ready to stand up for your community and support your local sheriff? Join the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association and become a vital member of the Sheriff's Citizens Posse. At cspoa.org, we empower citizens like you through weekly webinars, arming you with the knowledge to back your constitutional county sheriff. Together, we can uphold our Constitution and ensure liberty and justice for all. Your community needs you now more than ever.
Cybercrime is exploding. Take Sarah from Sweet Delights, whose world crumbled after having to close with not being able to bounce back. Small businesses are prime targets, but the right strategies can keep yours safe. Jay Hill, CEO of Network Providers, has co-authored The Cyber Playbook Simplifies Cybersecurity for Business Owners with Strategies to avoid costly breaches and fines. Build a strong cyber attack response. Secure your business with key protections. Cyber threats aren't slowing down, but you can stay ahead. Protect your business. Ensure its security for tomorrow. Get the Cyber Playbook today at networkprovidersinc.com/cyber-playbook or call 385-446-5500 now.
All right, back with you live, ladies and gentlemen. Sam Bushman, James Edwards on your radio. So there's an attorney, and his name is Ty Clevenger, and he is turning up the heat on the FBI. He's naming names, James. And what Clevenger has done is unleashed a scathing statement, a, quote, rebuke of the FBI because of the stonewalling in the Seth Rich case, accusing the Bureau of peddling incredibly weak excuses to hide thousands of critical documents that could blow the lid off the Russian hoax, the murder in 2016 of Seth Rich. They call it the mysterious murder, if you will, and more. Okay, so Ty is saying, look, the FBI is still covering this stuff up. Now, Kash Patel is at the helm of this. And Kash Patel and others are saying, hey, man, give us a little bit of time. It's not what it appears. Well, I hope Dan Bongino's right on that. But I think Ty's got a point here. Listen, this is 2016. This guy got murdered. It's been literally 9 years since then, James. That's a long time. The government's still saying it was a murder. I'm sorry. The government's still saying it was a robbery gone wrong, botched. We're calling it a murder. And we believe that Seth Rich was an incredible operative blowing the whistle on the Democrats, so they snuffed him out for it. And the more we push, the more the government seems to get up in arms. Even to the point where then the family started suing people who focused on the Seth Rich story. The media or anybody else who wanted to pull on the threads of truth were even shut down by the family. So now you need investigations to say, did the family get threatened? Did the family get paid off? Why would the family not want to have the truth and closure on their son, their brother, their whatever? I don't get it. But now we see Ty Clevenger literally pushing and starting to file some briefs and different things to demand the truth on this. And good for Ty, James.
Good for him indeed. And this was a very interesting thing if people have forgotten the details. And this is just the facts, just the details. So Seth Rich was a 27-year-old Democratic National Committee staffer. Now, so he's murdered in the middle of Washington, D.C., in July of 2016. So that was right in the middle of the Trump-Clinton campaign, right during convention season. How do you get shot twice in the back in the middle of Washington, D.C.? There is a Cyclops camera on every pole in Washington, D.C. Nobody saw that in Washington, D.C. They can't figure it out. 10 years, I mean, in the nation's capital, 10 years later, maybe it was a robbery. We really don't know. I guarantee you that just doesn't happen. Now, this was an interesting thing, too, because you can remember, of course, back in the 90s in Arkansas, this was, at least they actually called this a murder. They claim it was an attempted robbery. I guess we'll never know. But at least they did call it a murder. You know, in Arkansas, when people ran afoul of
the problem is they didn't take anything, James.
and then, you know, but at least they called it a murder and an attempted robbery. You know, in the 90s in Arkansas, when people would run afoul of the Clintons, they would commit suicide by shooting themselves in the back from 10 feet away and stuff like that. So there were a lot of
ran
suicides
over by
like
trains.
that.
The list goes on and on with the Arkancides, you know.
But anyway, so, and of course they said it was entirely debunked that he was involved with any sort of whistleblowing activity. It's just one of those things with the camera on every corner. Nobody saw what happened.
Assange even hinted that he was involved.
I would believe that there's some smoke, that there is some fire to that smoke, if I had to guess. But it just seems very
interesting.
implausible.
And I commend Ty, though, for bringing this up and sticking with the story, because what we have a habit of in America, James, is we're hot on something, and, hey, 2 weeks later, we don't hear a thing about it. For example, when are we going into Fort Knox, buddy, to see if the gold's there? Weren't they going to go ahead and bust out and do that, you know? If they're running short on staff, they could assign Sam and James to go in there.
Yeah, we'll go check it out.
Me and you went in there, buddy. We can
we'll check it out. We just, travel expenses. I could do that.
We'll roll up
Maybe
there,
put
on the headlamp cameras, and just roll in.
Yeah, that's right.
Sam
Why
Bushman
not?
Here.
Yeah,
I want you guys to let me touch the gold. You know what I mean?
I always laughed when you said something that made me laugh years ago. We were talking about drive-by media. You go, yeah, Rush Limbaugh always says it, but he's part of it too, in terms of just, covering something hard and heavy and intensive, and then, after it just gets forgotten. Like those people in North Carolina. We were raising all that money for folks in North Carolina with our friend John Hill, and those people are still suffering. But I mean, I get it.
And John and others are still helping them. By the way, let's be clear.
Yeah, those people. If your house blew away in a hurricane last fall, you're not entirely 100% just because a couple of months have passed. So, but I get it. I mean, everybody does that to an extent. But good on you for bringing up some of these things that a lot of people have moved on from.
All right, Homeland Security Kristi Noem in the news. Now, just so you know, Kristi on the national stage, everybody thinks she's a conservative rock star. But if you talk to the farmers and everybody else in her home state, they're not so fond of Kristi. She's working with the enemies to take land from ranchers and farmers and everything else and build pipelines that we don't want and everything else. But I digress. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced that Americans who don't have real IDs will still be allowed to fly, just with a lot more scrutiny.
I was going to bring this up. Sam, this is crazy because as soon as you mentioned her name, so I have a desk here in my home studio.
Yes, sir.
And it's got a glass cover on it. So it's got this glass top. And so with glass, I have these dry erase markers for when I'm doing interviews. So if I want to jot down a note, I just write it on the glass and you can just erase it. But I was just writing down.
Actually, really brilliant. It's perfect.
Yeah, no, it's great. And just as soon as you mentioned Kristi Noem's name, without even knowing where you were going with this particular story, I wrote Real ID on the glass in a black Expo dry erase marker. Yeah, because this was interesting. And I will say, hey, say what you will about her. She's definitely the best looking director of Homeland Security we've ever had. But I saw this, and I was going to ask you, did you ever get your Real
Trump
ID?
likes to fill his staff with pretty people, I'll tell you that right now.
Hey, he sure does. He sure does. There's been a lot of them. Kayleigh McEnany, the new one, Caroline Levitt, who you've interviewed, and going even back to our friend Hope Hicks, who sort of threw me under the bus but spared you a similar fate. He does
she only
like
spared me because I basically put it in her face, buddy.
But the
you want to throw down the media with me, Hope Hicks? Come on, sister, let's get her done.
But they are smart, and they are well smoking, and they do look good.
That's
and
right. That's right.
I would rather them listen. I mean, why not? If you can find somebody that meets the requirements of the job, and they also look good, that counts for something. Sizzle and substance and all of that.
Delivery is important, and the ability to professionally come in and handle a situation is critical. I get that 100%. But here's my problem with this whole thing. I do have a real.
Let's go to Real ID.
I have one.
Did you say? I'm not opposed to it.
I am.
It has been crazy. Well,
I am opposed.
Let me
tell you why I have one.
All right.
Because I don't have a driver's license because I can't drive, right? But I do have a Utah ID card, and it expires every couple of years. The ID card is for some weird reason, and I don't understand this, but they don't last as long as the driver's license before they have to be replaced or updated or whatever.
Yeah.
I had to sue them for discrimination on that, but I'll let it go for right now. Anyway, my card expired, and I had to get a new one, and a new one just came, and it was Real ID. What do I do about it? I mean, I can't stop it.
Okay, so
I can't not have an ID, right? So it was kind of foisted upon me, if you will.
I was reading all of this about it because I haven't taken the time to go in there. I mean, driver's licenses are good now for like a decade, and mine doesn't expire until.
Now you can.
I know.
They're just gonna do a super make sure that James is safe.
Yeah, full body cavity search for James, but so I did. I mean, the thing
is,
is,
prison,
my daughter just turned 15 in March, and so she had to go up to the DMV to get her permit, and they were there. They were there for 10 hours. I mean, they got there when it opened at 8, and they're having these extended hours right now, and I think they got home at like between 5 and 6. And because everybody in the world is slamming these DMVs to get their Real ID, because you got to have this star.
Yeah, I understand the law was passed in 2005, James. So they're
it's been coming for like 20 years, but now it's really here. And so exactly. But anyway, I mean, I've been reading all of this stuff about it where, because I haven't taken the time to go there. I mean, I guess I will. I'd rather not. I don't think it's necessary, but I'll go because it'll make it easier on me. But supposedly you can still drive and you can still, go to the post office, but you can't go into other federal buildings, which is to me like a blessing. Why would I want to? And but the big thing is you can't fly, or can you? So this was the whole thing. I mean, the biggest impediment to not having a Real ID.
You can fly, James. Now you can fly. They told you you couldn't.
They
now
told
they're saying,
you,
okay, you really can.
They said in no uncertain terms, you absolutely positively cannot fly without a Real ID after May 7th, and then May 7th, which is today.
Unless you're an illegal, James, then you can.
But apparently, you really can. Even I can. Not a non-illegal with just a regular old driver's license. I could actually still fly. So it was like was it a big prank? And so all of a sudden, actually, you still can fly.
It's the Communist Manifesto in full force. We're going to implement it. We're going to overstate the target, and we're going to back off. So you're grateful that it's not as extreme as it was, and we'll just give you a little bit more time to comply. It's kind of like, hey, we're going to implement communism, socialism style, and so everybody's going to feel good about it, right? So if I stake out an extreme position and then I back off from that, you're going, thank the good Lord for that.
Well, that's
it's all good.
I laughed, though. All these months of doomsday, you will not fly, you will not do anything. Well, actually, you will fly. You're just going to have to wait in line a little longer. I was like, what the hell was that all about?
Well, and here's my question. Why isn't Trump shredding Real ID? Why do we have to have Real ID in the first place? Let me ask you a question. If the door to the plane is locked to the cockpit, why do they care if I have a Real ID or not? All right?
It's a good question. We'll ponder that.
Why can the illegals not have a real ID? In fact, they get to fly without even any ID. All right, hour one in the can. James Edwards, thepoliticalcesspool.org. Hour two coming up. God save our republic.